16% of Christian teens say they understand their purpose in life, and many youth pastors and youth leaders are struggling with what to do in their ministry as well. If you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, uninspired, just unsure, even overwhelmed, you're not alone. This episode is your wake-up call, and we're going to talk about 5 warning signs that your ministry might need a revamp and how you can turn it around. So stay tuned. If we don't know the why, I've stolen it from you so many times where it's like we're just meeting till we graduate, and then we graduate out of that, and then we just meet till we die.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
Move away.
Yeah.
We're just gonna meet until we die, move, or graduate. Yeah.
A lot of times when ministry becomes an idol because it's the only place we feel successful, like that's when a lot of guys do a lot of damage in their ministry because their life is out of balance. But when you're just kind of getting in the truck and there's no real reason, but you're just like, I don't know why. I'm just like, I don't really feel excited to go to youth group like recently.
Yep.
That I would say is like, blinking red, like, hey, something's going on here. But maybe
he's like, he's healing people, he's casting out demons, like he's staying up late, and then next verse is like early in the morning before everybody like got up, he went away to pray by himself. And it's like, man, if I was worn out from a heavy ministry day, I probably wouldn't get up early and go pray by myself. Now, before we get started, I want to, mention that as I was reading through these, I was like, man, I think I might be in this category. Like I've been going so hard for so long that I'm like, I need some space to kind of reprocess and see like, I remember there's a story years ago that I heard where it was like, a daughter that, she was like, why, she learned how to cook like a roast from her mom. And one day she was cooking the roast and she, her husband walks in and he's like, why are you cutting the ends of it off? And she's like, I don't know. That's just like how my mom taught me how to do it. And so then she's like, that's actually an interesting question. Like, let me call my mom and ask her. And she's like, why did we have to cut the ends off the roast, before? And she's like, I don't know. That's just how my mom taught me how to do it. And I was like, and she was like, let's call grandma and see like why. And so they call grandma and it's like, why do we have to cut the ends off the roast, as we're preparing? And she's like, oh, because we didn't have enough oven to fit the whole thing in. and so sometimes we can get caught up in just like going through the motions, like where it's like we don't have to stop. Like sometimes we have to stop and reevaluate. Like, are we doing this like just because we've always done it?
Yeah.
Or are we doing this because this is what we need to do in this season?
Yeah.
And I think I'm almost at that point now. I'm like I've been doing a lot, and I'm like, okay, like we need to peel back the layers. What is it we need to focus on in this next season for growth? And so, some of these things are really, really good that I'm excited to jump into today.
Yeah. Well, I guess without further ado, what we're going to be looking at is 5 warning signs. Think of it as like a dashboard warning light, right? It starts blinking. It might not mean that your car's about to blow up, right? Like
you just put a piece of black tape over it. Some of you guys have been operating like that. It's like, I don't even want to know what it is.
You just turn the music up louder.
Turn the music up louder to not hear that noise.
Well, and maybe we have. Maybe we, of course, metaphorically, but like maybe we have in our youth ministry. We've just tried to cover some of these up by just trying to do some of this more. And maybe something inside of you is kind of like, in that something inside of you maybe being the Holy Spirit, just kind of being like, hey, there's so much more than what we're doing. And so the number one warning sign your youth ministry could use a revamp is that your students couldn't tell you the why behind your ministry. And we can put it this way. If I were to walk into your youth ministry and I asked the average student why you meet, what would they say? And even more so, if I asked them the mission of the youth group, would they have an answer? If I were to go up to the average student and you're like, no, don't pick that one. He doesn't really, no. If I were to ask the average student, why do you guys meet? What would they say? They might say something like, well, we have a lot of fun. Or, hey, well, I don't know, my parents just dropped me off. Or they might even say something good like, well, we're here to learn more about Jesus. And 100% that is a valid answer. But what's the point of all of this, right? It's so to seek and save that which was lost, to know, how to be trained up and sent out and equipped for every good work, to be built up as a body of believers. And Michael Hyatt says people lose their way when they lose their why. And,
what I think would be interesting, so churches do this actually. They actually hire these organizations that will come and secret shop their church.
Yep.
And we've actually done this before. We're thinking about doing it again for our church. But what they actually intentionally hired non-believers, because to really see what they think about this. Like, do they have a positive interaction in your church and everything? And so if your leaders and your students know that there's a possibility that they could be secret shopped, they're way more intentional about everything. And I would be too, it's like, man, if someone might come that it's like a new student, but we don't know if they're representing this other organization or whatever. But what they found was the feedback that we got from being secret shop one time was, they would actually stop in the area near your church and ask for directions to your church and to see if anyone in your area had heard of your church. So they're like, hey, I'm trying to find, McLean Bible Church, Prince William. Like, could you tell me where it is? And they're like, I've never heard of it. Like they would go to because we're on the same street as like a Cracker Barrel. So like in this instance, like they stopped in Cracker Barrel and like asked, and like they're like, and it's on the same street. And so that was like really revealing to us. It's like our community doesn't even know that we're here. Like we're right down the street. And so things like that. I wonder like if we should organize like a secret shopping.
We should. Teens would love that.
I know. It's like, hey, just go attend another youth group, like, and give feedback on what they can do better, what they can, what you like about that, and what, I think it'd be fascinating.
Maybe I'll shave my beard and be a senior next week at your youth ministry.
Hey, there you go.
Well, they found a stat, speaking of this, does the average student know the why? Only 16% of Christian teens in the U.S. say they have a strong understanding of their purpose in life that's connected to their faith. And that's from the Barna Group's Open Generation 2022. And so we see that in a very small amount of kids can connect the main why in their life with their passion. Yep. And in youth ministry, if they can't, if we don't know the why, I've stolen it from you so many times where it's like, we're just meeting till we graduate. And then we graduate out of that, and then we just meet till we die. Yeah. And that's the reality.
Move away. Yeah. We're just gonna meet until we die, move, or graduate. Yeah.
And so like why? And so if you think about this, and maybe you can even do this as a youth pastor, you can even survey your kids and just say, hey, if you could explain why we meet in one sentence on an index card, write it down and then hand it to me. And when you look through those, they're not all probably going to say the exact same sentence, right? But like if the general point is, hey, we're here because we want to be trained up to be sent out, then chances are you're probably doing a good job. If you get a whole smattering of answers, that doesn't mean you've been doing a bad job. It just means that you need to refocus and clearly communicate. And so some action steps, if this is what needs to be revamped, is set that bold vision. That's one of the 7 values of a gospel advancing ministry is a bold vision focuses it. And so set that bold vision, figure out what your cause turf is, the amount of students in your area, in your community, right? Absolutely. Set that vision and then remind students of it constantly. And we can do that through visual reminders. So we can have, a visual display, stuff on the walls, just stuff as they walk in. Now you do need to change that occasionally because eventually it just blends in. Yeah. But we want that to be clear. And we don't just want to invite students into the mission. We don't want to say this is what God has called us to. We want you to be a part of this. We want to hand the mission to them and say, look, we're all going to have to kind of play our part if this is going to happen. And that really causes them to depend on the Spirit.
Yep. Yeah. So second warning line, you might be seeing this on your dashboard. You're not excited to go to youth group and you're not sure why.
Has there been a season like that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Why? Like, well, you didn't know why, but like, what did it feel like to not go?
Well,
to youth
I would say,
to go to youth group?
I don't even know if that is the necessary thing. If you're not sure why, sometimes you know why. You're like, I am so tired. Well, I do not want to go to youth group. Well, I know that there's a conflict happening that I just don't want to deal with.
So that's my point. But that doesn't necessarily mean. And the reason why we added in the you're not sure why is because like, yes, there might be a hard season in your ministry where you're like, I just know this is going to be a grind. And we don't want to fake it and say, like, I'm always super excited to go to youth ministry, even if I know there's a problem I'm going to have to deal with or a conflict or a tough conversation. But when you're just kind of getting in the truck and there's no real reason, but you're just like, I don't know why. I'm just like, I don't really feel excited to go to youth group like recently. Yep. That I would say is like, blinking red, like, hey, something's going on here. But maybe unpack a little bit, like time you weren't super excited maybe or less excited.
Well, I think different seasons of burnout, like where you just, you've been going so hard, and I think I'm coming out of a season now, so I'm actually excited. We change up our programming during the summer, where we don't do as much like weekly programs. So like right now we do 2, like I prepare 2 messages a week. Like we go pretty hard all school year long, and then the summer is like a little bit better of a rhythm because a lot of people are traveling, or we have our camps, and so those are like a lot more intensive times with students. But we give like our small group leaders the break for the summer, like where we're not doing like small groups, but we're still doing some different activities, and I'm kind of excited about that, like just to kind of take a deep breath and like and be able to not be in the grind as much of like constantly preparing our messages and stuff, and writing our own curriculum. And I think so. I would say like in some ways I'm in that season now where it's not that like I'm not called to do what I'm doing. Like sometimes I'm like, man, I just need a little bit of a break, a little bit of a breather. And so that could be like a regular rhythm, like where it's like, okay, is it the end of the school year where it's like everybody's kind of feeling that? Like students are like, I cannot wait for summer. Like I cannot wait for this to kind of like, you know, not be the grind or to get over exam season, whatever. So I think for me, it's been like that recently, just to, yeah. And by the way, I want to mention this too, because I think this is we want to differentiate this. So almost everybody regularly, all the youth leaders that we talk to are discouraged on the ride home from youth group. And that can be spiritual warfare. So like that could just be like, I mean, there's always like that drive home where you're like, am I even making a difference? Like, I mean, I totally blew my message tonight. Like it was just not good at all, or whatever. Or I said the wrong thing, or it's like, oh man, what about the student that was new? And did they feel like they were more welcome? You know? And so you're always like replaying that in your mind. But I would say like this is more talking about like, do you have an excitement to be part of youth group? And I would say for me, it's when I focused more on the tasks rather than like just connecting with students. So there was a time recently where I was like, man, I'm tired. I'm like worn out. Like I've been just cranking out all this, like, you know, all this, like there's always this stuff to do. We recently did like a revamping of our student ministry space. I'm like, that seems overwhelming. Like I've been working like on all this extra stuff. And then, so I was kind of like dreading going into like a Wednesday night. I was like, okay, all right, once I get past this, then it'll be like, you know, I'll be able to kind of relax, whatever, and just kind of chill. And then I just like stayed at like our kind of like our hospitality desk where we have like food. And I just like talked with every student, and I was like, this is why I do this. Like, it's so much fun, like just to connect and like hear about the week. And I felt like the Lord was just kind of, because, you know, I don't always get to just, you know, like stand there and talk with students like directly. Like sometimes I'm like leading leaders or praying, you know, all this sort of stuff. But it was just a cool moment of like, okay, like this is why I'm here. Like, and if I can do more of this, then I know that like it makes all the other stuff better.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I love the reflective questions that we have in our outline. Is when was the last time you walked into youth group with passion instead of pressure? And has it become more of a job than a calling?
Yeah.
And so if you're in a place where, of course, you might have an off night, like you might have just an exhausting week, like you might have something personally. So again, if you're like, I can easily pinpoint why, but if you're just generally just kind of like, I don't know, like it just doesn't, you know, I'm not as excited. Hey, number one, I would step back and evaluate all aspects of your life to make sure you're not out of bounds. So it could be as simple as like, you haven't been eating. You haven't been eating right. Yeah. You're out of shape. You're maybe there's an underlying health condition going on. Maybe it's a relationship with a spouse or a child that just, you know, just something's going on that you're distracted by, that you really need to deal with that. Maybe it's finances, like you're just really struggling financially and you just can't seem to look past that, and you're focusing more on the salary than on the calling. And I think what we need to do is we need to be really great at stepping back and kind of looking at our life holistically and saying, okay, a lot of times when ministry becomes an idol because it's the only place we feel successful, like that's when a lot of guys do a lot of damage in their ministry because their life is out of balance. And so we need to step back. And then also too, like, talk to a trusted mentor, like have somebody that you can go and talk to and kind of say, this is why I'm feeling this way. They might be able to ask some questions. And then the last thing we have is actually something that you try and do once a year. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
I'm thinking about doing it more than once a year because it's so good. Or just block out a vision retreat to get alone with God and to kind of plan out, you know, like, and just really evaluate, like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, am I, you know, what am I focused on? Or just like reevaluate, like I had some goals, or like I had some, you know, things that the Lord was really trying to press into me this year. How is that going? So I'm almost thinking about like doing that like halfway through the year now. Yeah. Because I do it in December at the end of the year to kind of prepare for the next year. Yeah. And I'm seeing the need for it like in June. Like, but then it's like, man, things are so crazy in June where it's like, man, I don't know if I can, but to prioritize that, just to kind of get alone and just process and just take a step back before another crazy season of summer activity. So yeah. So take some time and get alone with God and just kind of walk back through that. And then again, if you're still struggling with that, reach out to somebody. Reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you and help. Well, and what's fascinating too, and you know, people are like, I mean, how, like, I can barely afford to pay my bills. Like, how am I gonna go away for us, like a retreat somewhere, like where, you know, and what I found is like there is a plethora of ministries, like, or people that just want to use like like an Airbnb that they have, like they literally block off certain days to give free to pastors or to people in ministry so that they can just recharge and reset. And so so retreathood.com. It's actually a website that my brother started to basically help pastors and missionaries connect with different people that like want to just help with you know, pastors rejuvenating. So anyways, take a look at that. You can look via your state, like what's near you. Yeah. And there's some cool stuff there.
Yeah. Warning sign number 3 that your ministry might need a revamp is that prayer is a last resort, not your first. And so Oswald Chambers put it this way. He said, prayer does not fit us for the greater work. Prayer is the greater work. And when we stop and reflect, when was the last time you saw a direct answer to prayer that you had for your students or ministry? If every leader or student prayed as often as you, would that be a good or bad thing? That one that we go over. Yeah, right now. Okay, let's open it up. Right now, not great for me because I have so much on my checklist that I find myself waking up, and from the very moment I wake up, I'm like, I got to get all this stuff done. And as you and I have both shared, and I know everybody can relate to, it's like if I actually just stop and just take time and pray, I get so much more done throughout the day. Yeah. But I'm still learning that lesson in my life right now. Yep. And one of the great things about having kids is it forces you to pray. Like having kids really helps you. Yep. So I have that rhythm in my life right now. But the reality of going to God and saying, okay, God, let's spend some time with you. That old adage, go to God about people before you go to people about God, is huge. And I think that question of like, when was the last time you saw a direct answer to a prayer request that you had for a student? Like, if we can think back on like, I prayed for this student and this is what happened, doesn't mean that it God answered it in the way that you wanted it, but just like, I prayed for this and this is what I saw. Good. Like, I think that should be something that we can constantly point to if we're praying. Yeah.
When I think you have like your daily rhythms of prayer, like, obviously like meal times, like maybe when you wake up or you're doing your quiet time, you have like evening, before you go to bed. But I think what I'm really lacking, and I'm seeing, I just need to linger with the Lord in like extended prayer, like to have like an hour like prayer walk, or like just spend some time just focused in prayer, like praying through specific things. I think that is where I think I can grow right now in this season. And it's not that I'm seeing it as a last resort, because like as soon as if there's an issue that comes up or someone like, it's like, no, I'm going to go right to that. I'm going to go right to prayer. But just to stop and reflect on how we're modeling that rhythm of prayer in a weekly rhythm. Yeah.
So what are some action steps somebody can take if they're realizing that they're not prioritizing prayer?
Man, study the prayer life of Jesus. Like even like this first day of public ministry, is Mark 2. He's like, he's healing people, he's casting out demons, like he's staying up late. And then the next verse is like, early in the morning before everybody like got up, he went away to pray by himself. And it's like, man, if I was worn out from a heavy ministry day, I probably wouldn't get up early and go pray by myself. And so, so he saw it as such a priority to get direction and communion with God the Father that he made it a regular rhythm. That wasn't the only time, obviously, all throughout his ministry he does that. But pray for students by name on a weekly basis. I love how intentional you've become with this, like with the cards that you've created. Mm-hmm. You have to pray for like specific things, like students A through F or whatever on this day, and for specific schools in your area. Like how are you regularly praying? You've created like cards that you flip through as you pray, which helps kids stay focused. Mm-hmm. But then also making prayer a part of your ministry. So not just like, in your private life, but like in your programs, making prayer as a regular rhythm. So you can say, hey, collectively, we're teaching students how to pray, and we're spending, 5, maybe 10 minutes of every program praying. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be a good rhythm to be in for programs.
Yeah, absolutely. The number 4 warning sign that your youth ministry might need a revamp is you're just copying what you've seen work elsewhere. And so if we were to ask you, is your ministry shaped more by trending templates or by what God is doing in your context? Are you reacting to popularity or listening for purpose? Somebody once said you can borrow methods, but you can't borrow mission. And so a lot of time, this is one of Carrie Nieuwhof's 2025 rising trends, is the rise of the non-derivative church, which is essentially
copying everybody.
As Gen Z continues to seek authenticity, what becomes less powerful is just copying and pasting the dynamic speaker, engaging, all this stuff and just doing it. And what was interesting is we actually posted a clip of that, and there were so many. Okay. Okay. Let's just go for it. Yeah. There were so many people. It's like, well, that's why you need to return to the Catholic Church, or that's why I'm Orthodox. Like everybody had like, really? Well, this is why you need to do this. And I'm like, okay, hold on, time out. Like that is the same thing. The whole point is like, no matter what parish I'm going to, like I'm getting the exact same thing. So it's like, no, time out. I think we just need to step back and say the point of this is not this is bad or this is bad or worshiping this way is bad or worshiping this way. The point is simply, it's like, am I getting my purpose and calling from God and saying, what do these people in this local body and this local church need to hear from God's word? Rather than oh, well, they did this and that seemed to work for them, so let's do this. Or, hey, well, we've always done it this way, so we need to do it this way. And that was just interesting to me, where somebody even commented, they were like, well, what's so bad about this? And I even had to put like a comment. I was like, guys, we're not saying any of this is bad.
Yeah.
But if I'm just doing this because the church down the street is doing it and it seems to be working for them, then that's not why I should be doing something.
Yeah. Well, and also if you're trying to be like someone else, like you might be missing out on the potential that God has specifically for your church,
Absolutely.
ministry. Like we've even seen this as we've getting, and some people don't have the luxury of like being connected to other churches in their area that they are communicating with. And like, there's certain things, it's almost like there's different fingerprints of like, what youth ministries are kind of known for in our area. Like, and each of them are a little bit different, and they reach a certain type of student, or like they're better at reaching certain types of students. It's not like they like focus on like, we're only going to reach athletes, or, like it's really interesting to see how God has like uniquely wired certain ministries, like in certain churches, to kind of have their own focus. Like for the longest time, our church, because of our senior pastor, he had a special needs child, and because of that, like we had incredible ministry, and we still have incredible ministries that reach special needs children and also their families. And so that was kind of our distinctive for a long time. It's just like, man, we really want to make sure we're a caring place and an easy place for people with special needs to come and to get connected. And that, like, people were driving from like hours away just to come to our church, because it's like, my church doesn't even have wheelchair ramps or like, like my church doesn't have anything. Like we feel like we're more of a burden when we attend our local church. Like, so we're going to go to a church that can accommodate like our family's special needs children. And so anyways, all that to say is like, what is the distinction? And why, like, are you just copying someone else out of laziness, or is it like, how is God uniquely positioned to us to reach, a unique group of people that might be overlooked in our community?
Yeah, so action steps for this: write out a list of your weekly activities and programs and ask, why do we do each one?
Cutting off the ends of the roast.
Yeah, and literally it's like looking through, okay, why do we open this way? Why do we have this format for our like teaching time? Hey, why do we do this? And again, it's just putting everything under a microscope and saying, okay, how did I, and if I find out it's like, because the last youth guy did this and I didn't feel like I could change that, or somebody else did that and I felt like that worked. The other thing is that we do regularly is have your students take a spiritual assessment to see if what you're doing is actually working. And so that's the 4-chair assessment that we both use in our youth ministries. That's tied to value number 4, disciple multiplication strategy. And so that's a great way to say like, okay, if you're feeling unsure of what you're doing is actually working, because you're like, there's maybe some insecurity, or just, I don't know, like, ask them. I say, hey, and don't say, what do you want? And then do that, because again, it'll be pizza, mac and cheese, right? So it's all that same stuff. But the reality is, just say, hey, how do you feel like your prayer life is? When was the last time you shared the gospel? And keep track of that. And that way it kind of had to, hey, we did this and we saw kids grow, or we did this and that kind of got stale. So just kind of have that in your back pocket.
Well, they say you are what you measure. And so having assessments regularly are a great way just to track what you want to matter.
So, all right, Keith, number 5 warning sign that your youth ministry needs a revamp is what?
You've lowered the bar just to keep them coming. And this can be so many different things. And I've seen this play out where people, like good students that like are really wanting to be activated in your ministry, they actually will disengage because you're not dealing with other issues. Like you're not providing leadership or discipline with other students that need to be, like talked to about certain behavior. And so, but you're lowering the bar, and then sometimes that can just be the personality of like, or not personality, but like the character stuff of just like avoidance, where you're like, I don't want to avoid making a scene about this conflict or whatever. But then now you're losing the respect of other students in your mission because you're not dealing with it. And so I would say that in light of that type of scenario, but you could be lowering the bar just to keep them coming, where it's like, hey, I don't really want to talk about, the Bible or like deeper spiritual truths, because that might not attract the right person. It's like, you want to definitely have them raise up to the bar that you set, just like you wouldn't talk, baby language to a baby for its whole life, because it would never learn English. Like it would never actually learn how to talk if you're just like, goo goo gaga, And so you want to talk in biblical language. You want to teach biblical truth so that they rise up to that and they learn that, not talk down to them in the sense of like you get on their level.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that you can just stop and reflect is, are you afraid that raising the challenge will shrink the crowd? And I think as we've experienced, it's the opposite. You raise the challenge and you attract people out of the woodwork. They're like, I'm ready for this.
Yes. Yep.
And so when was the last time you asked students to sacrifice on behalf of their faith? We're not talking about like slaughtering animals, right?
We're not.
Yeah, so sacrifice in the sense of like, what are they relationally?
My favorite Youth Group Chronicles clip is the one where you know exactly which one I'm going for, where they brought the goat, the speaker brought the goat to camp, and the kids all got attached to it, and then at the last one he sacrificed the goat in front of all the kids to talk about the sacrifice of Christ. But sorry, I can't think of sacrifice without that clip coming to mind. But yeah, when was the last time you asked kids to say like, okay, now we know the Bible says obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yeah.
So we really want to focus on teaching them to obey, as the Great Commission says. But the reality is like, are we trying to kind of be, there used to be helicopter parents and now they're called bulldozer parents. Or lawnmower parents is the other way. Yeah, where they're literally just trailblazing it to make everything smooth and easy for their kids. It's like we can do that in youth ministry a lot. We can try and say, hey, this is how it'll make it easy. And it's like, that's discipleship. Like, that's not easy.
A fascinating thing right there. So I think this is, we talked about technology in a previous episode, but when it comes to AI, I think it's going to, just similar to like how everybody depends on a GPS to get to where they're going. I think technology oftentimes elevates the outcome and not the journey. And we always say like, well, the journey is more important than the outcome or, the destination. And, what AI is showing is like only the outcome. Like, so people are using ChatGPT to just produce the outcome, but really the wrestling with that process is actually what creates the character. And so if we like chew up the food for the students and just put it in their mouths, which is kind of a gross analogy.
Yeah, it is.
They never learn how to chew.
Yeah.
Like, they never learn how to actually wrestle with the truth of God's word or like to extrapolate like a truth from God's word if we just deliver it to them already chewed up, And so I think, elevate that idea of having them learn the process of Bible study and learn the process of wrestling with hard truths of God and learning how to pray on their own. Not just delivering the final result with them. So so we see parents that are just trying to make their students' lives easier. And sometimes you have to lift weights to get stronger.
Yep.
Which like the literal tearing of your muscles. We have the biodome experiment where they tried to grow trees inside of a biodome and they only got to a certain height and they'd fall over. Like, why do they keep falling over at this height? It's because they didn't have the wind to give them micro fractures along the way to make them stronger. Yeah. And so that resistance is often what we can use to grow students. So all that to say is you're not doing them a favor if you're lowering the bar.
Nope.
Spiritually for them. You're actually hindering their long-term growth.
Yeah. And so, of course, some action steps for that is, are you introducing challenges that require risk, evangelism, prayer? Are you celebrating faithfulness over attendance? Is it not just, hey, like, look how many kids we have. It's look what God has done here because of your guys' willingness to be obedient to the Holy Spirit. And are you measuring what matters? Gospel advancing value number 6, measure what matters, biblical outcomes. And so again, if any of these is connected with you, it doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that your youth ministry is about self-destruct. Like it could, but what this really means is just kind of that refresh, that revamp to where we don't fall into that just kind of pattern of, well, this is just kind of what we do and we've always done it this way. And no, we never want to do something just because we've always done it.
And I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, now on all modern cars, there's a tire pressure sensor.
Yep.
And I remember having vehicles that didn't have that, and your warning sign was literally boom, like your tire would just blow out because it was so low.
Yeah.
And literally now we have a warning sign that can pop up on our dash to say, hey, your tire pressure is getting a little low, like add some air. And I think this is what the intentionality of this episode is to kind of give you guys a warning sign to not just let you drive until your tire blows out. Yeah. Like we want you to stay in ministry. We want you to upkeep the health of your ministry and the health of you serving in ministry. And that's what all of our resources are designed to do. We want to make you guys equipped to last longer in ministry, to not burn out, to not get fired because you're not doing your job well, or even just to burn out and just lose sight of the why that you're doing it. And so all these resources are doing that to help. And in every episode, we keep that in the focus. But also we have a youth ministry mastermind. We've talked about this, to the point where if you don't know about this yet, if you've listened to our content before, you're missing out. But we do have an online community of other youth leaders that are constantly sharing what's working in their current context. We have an online community where we're prompting different questions. This is how we did our 10K in May challenge. We kept everybody encouraged and just their mind focused as we held each other accountable to living out the gospel and training students on how to share the gospel more effectively. So all those resources are available for free if you join our online community, which is our youth ministry mastermind. The link is in the description. You can go ahead and dive in that, get activated right there now in our community so that you won't miss any of the future resources that we're producing. So until next time, we'll see you.